Good afternoon. I know you're all chewing. Good afternoon. Thank you. Really good to be here with you all for the last panel of this conference. I feel like the last panel especially was full of some of my favorite groups of people. So as an attorney, I am most inspired by those who invite us to dream in really bold ways about what this world could look like without prisons. And I think Jackie and the ancestors that she always moves with really helps us do that. So thank you for that. And I'm inspired by people who are showing us a way out of it. So how do we get to that world that we're dreaming of? And Dolores, I don't see you, but Dolores and the people that she is organizing with in California and across the country, formerly incarcerated folks, family members with incarcerated loved ones, they're showing us a way out. And so it's our role as attorneys to really listen carefully and take our cues from them. And this panel is full of more people who are inviting us to dream about how we could do it differently, and they are making a path out of this. So I just could not be more excited about this final panel of folks. So I will just turn it over to them. Let me introduce them. I will read some bios, and then we will hear from them. They'll each talk for about 5 to 7 minutes about their work. I'll ask some questions, and then we'll open it up for your questions at the end. And we'll go for the full hour till 1:10 or so. I know people need to dash to the airport in some cases, so we will end at 1:10. So first to my right is Marcus Bullock. He's an entrepreneur extraordinaire and justice reform advocate. Marcus is the founder and CEO of the mobile app Flick Shop. Download it, rate it, use it. It's a free app that enables incarcerated folks to receive postcards in the mail from family, friends, and supporters. These Flick Shops, they're a lifeline for folks, and they're doing so much to help people stay connected and build relationships, so Marcus will tell you a lot more about that. Marcus also co-founded the Washington, D.C., no, I'm talking about the same one. He co-founded Flick Shop, a program that, no, this is an incorrect bio here. It's a program that teaches persons returning to the community, Flick Shop School of Business, a program that teaches persons returning to their community from prison life skills, entrepreneurship, and mobile application development, so how to build the next set of tools. He's a member of the Justice Policy Institute's Board of Directors. He's been appointed by DC's mayor as a commissioner for Reentry and Returning Citizens Affairs. And he's won, among many other awards, the 2015 Innovator of the Year Award and the 2016 Booz Allen Hamilton Aspen Ideas Award, and most recently was named a Techstars Innovator. Right? Topeka Sam, Topeka's, we were joking, her biography seems to be updated every month or so, because you're just doing so many amazing things. So we're scrapping the one that was old. The latest one, Topeka Sam, is the founder and executive director of the Ladies of Hope Ministries. She is also the co-founder of Hope House NYC, a safe housing space for women and girls coming back from prison. Topeka serves on the board of directors for Grassroots Leadership and Operation Restoration. She is a Beyond the Bars 2015 Fellow, a 2016 Justice and Education Scholar, both from Columbia University, a 2017 Soros Justice Advocacy Fellow, working on probation and parole accountability, director of the Dignity Campaign for Cut 50, a 2018 Unlocked Futures inaugural cohort member, just like Marcus, host of the Last Mile Second Chances show on Sirius XM, which airs Sundays, 9 a.m. Eastern, and the founder and national organizer of the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls. Cheryl Rowland is the founder of the Jumpsuit Project, a socially engaged art project that was conducted at UNC at Greensboro during the 2016-2017 academic year. The primary purpose of the project is to raise awareness around issues related to incarceration. This work grows directly out of Cheryl's personal history. In August of 2012, he was issued a warrant in DC and learned that 4 felony counts were pending against him. After 9 months, the charges were reduced to misdemeanors. In October 2013, Cheryl went to trial and lost. and 10 months later was released from prison. Almost a year and a half after being released, he was exonerated of all charges. Cheryl creates art that challenges ideas around controversial social and political constructs and generates a safe space to process, question, and share. So I'll have you all start just by talking about 5 to 7 minutes about how you are, working to break down barriers between inside and outside. You're all doing that in some way. So if you could just talk about your work for a few minutes. Marcus.
Good afternoon. How you guys doing this afternoon? Thank you guys for having me here. This campus is unbelievably beautiful. It's really, really cold here, but I've enjoyed my stay. While I'm one of those ones who are going to be jetting later, I'm looking forward already to coming back and joining you guys again. So again, thank you for having me. When I was 15 years old, back in 1996, I was charged and convicted and sentenced to 8 years in prison, in adult prisons, along with my then co-defendant, now my best friend, Dwayne Betts. Dwayne and I was 15 years old, Dwayne was 16 years old. We carjacked someone. We were sentenced to 23 years of life, 15 years suspended, 8 years to serve inside of these prisons. So I grew up inside of a prison cell as a teenager. It's a very interesting experience as a 16, 17, 18-year-old calling home and talking to people about prom. And I'm on the other side talking about count time and commissary. It's a very interesting experience looking back in hindsight, because while it was one of the hardest times of my life back then, I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity that I have right now to be able to be one of the ones who give back to this space. When I was released in 2004, I was 23 years old, very challenging time trying to find a job, getting back into the career path. I've been gone for almost a decade of my life, and I really even couldn't explain where I had been for those years prior. I remember that time like it was yesterday, because while I spent the majority of that time, applying for job applications, learning how to just navigate through these new streets of DC. DC looked completely different from when I left. A lot of my friends from the neighborhood that I grew up in were either also in prison for longer sentences, they were dead, or they were still doing the same things. And I knew that as a 23-year-old man that had just served 8 years in prison, I didn't want to go back to that block that I used to hang on every day. While the challenge of employment was hard, and it's hard for a lot of the people that come out of these cells, I was finally able to land a job at a paint store where I was the guy who mixed up the paint. And if you've ever been to a paint store, if you ever painted your kitchen, you've met me before, right? I came in, I introduced you to 187,000 colors of blue, and then you narrowed it down to the first 20. And then you took all of the rest of the afternoon to try to figure out the final 2 that you're probably going to end up putting on your walls. And the majority of the customers that will come into the paint store will say, "Hey, Marcus, how much do you charge to paint my kitchen?" I'm like, "Oh, we don't paint kitchens. I sell you the blue paint so that you can paint your own kitchen." But I saw an opportunity there because while my job, it was great and I was really, really happy to be working there, it wasn't a sustainable career decision for me. Couldn't really build a life off of working on a minimum wage job. This opportunity was great because while you would come into the paint store and ask me about the blue, the contractors of the world would come in and they would complain about it not being any work out there in the community. I'm like, "What are you talking about? Miss Johnson comes in every day and wants me to paint her kitchen. What are you talking about?" And so a light bulb went off, and I created Perspectives Painting Contractors, where I became the conduit, the broker almost, between you and that contractor. We ended up growing this painting business to a small firm where we, painted a couple kitchens blue, to taking on some larger clients, BWI Airport and Howard University, Georgetown University, National Press Building. And as we grew this business, now with the real excitement in my life, started to happen. I'm 25, 26 years old. I can't believe that I've been tremendously blessed to be commissioned to run such an incredible company with an awesome team. We grew our team to about 18 full-time employees, with the majority of them being, all the rest of them being returning citizens. Which is another interesting thing because, you know, for a long time I was like hiding the fact that I had been to prison. It was like in job interviews, and like, have you ever been to prison? I'm like, oh, yeah. I'm like, all right, see you next time. And then now I'm on the other side of the interview table and people are like, oh, I'm so sorry to let you know I've been to prison. I'm like, oh, you got felonies? Man, I got 3 of those things. Come on and join it. You are perfect for our company. It's a little reverse discrimination there, I guess. I don't know. But if that's illegal, let me know in the law school. I won't do that anymore. So we grew this painting business, and it was awesome. But what happened as I'm growing and I'm traveling, and you know I have a girlfriend now who became my wife, and this was an awesome experience. But I realized that one of the most important pieces, one of the most important parts of me, one of the people that were the extensions of me, I grew up in a prison cell as a teenager. So those men that were there in those cells with me, they became my brothers. And when you're in prison, you learn very swiftly that only when you're there do you understand that there are other people that are in these cells that have stories. There's stories behind the reasons why they're there. There's stories that come from their grandma's kitchen, and there's stories that come from auntie's Christmas gifts. And you realize that these aren't inmates or prisoners, or these are just people like me. And while I was really excited about having this opportunity to grow in my career as a construction company owner now, I realized that I was really neglecting a lot of those friends who I left behind, and I felt really, really guilty. Because in prison, there's no social media. There's no Facebook or internet or any of those things. And so I realized then that, man, I got to figure out a way to get back in touch with these guys, because mail is the only way, either mail these expensive, exorbitant collect calls or visiting. And because I'm a convicted felon, I couldn't go back to the prison to go visit them and collect calls, it just seems like if I was having a problem paying $15 to $17 for a 20-minute call, there had to be other people that had that same issue. And so I'm like, man, dude, I want to write you letters and I want to send you pictures of the beach that I just went to, but Monday turns into Tuesday, and then Tuesday turns into Wednesday, and I say I'm going to write a letter, but the letter never really happens. And I'm definitely not going to print a picture from my iPhone. I still, to this day, don't know how to do that. So I'm like, you know, I'm in the office, I'm talking to my partner at the construction company. I'm like, you know what, Tony, we should build an app that allows you to be able to connect back to people in prison. And he's like, man, do you know how to build an app, mobile app? I'm like, dude, I ain't know how to run a construction business. What are you talking about? And so we did, and we built FlickShop. So you take a picture, add some quick text, press send, and for 99 cents, we take that picture and text and print it on a real tangible postcard, mail it to any person in a youth detention center, jail, prison, or immigration facility. We're the guys who connect you back to one of the 2.3 million people that are in these cells that don't receive love every day. And I want to make sure that we have a way to experience every moment that we share out here can be shared with them in there. We're on Facebook and we're on Instagram every day, and I'm like, I would love to be able to share this moment with you. After we launched FlickShop, you know, it was awesome. We've onboarded over 180,000 users. We sent almost 500,000 FlickShops to date. And while it's really exciting to be able to connect these families back to the people in prison, I realized that it really wasn't enough. And so while I love coming to events like this and talking about our path from being a convicted felon as a teenager to being an entrepreneur, it was more important for me to go back into these same prison cells that I went to and told that same story. Because the likelihood of someone in that cell meeting the CEO of a company that their family member uses every day is very minimal, and I want to be able to share that experience with them and say, hey, look, you can do it too. I'm not an anomaly. I just continue to progress and learn how to keep the connections going between the people that support us the most. So I'm grateful for you being a part of that community of people that support us the most. We nicknamed that campaign the FlickShop School of Business, where it turned into a curriculum that kind of sort of documented or blueprinted the success of mine and my co-defendant, Dwayne, where if any of you guys know him, he's a recent graduate of Yale Law School. What did that look like for a 15 and 16-year-old child then going through prison and then coming home, and what did we do? We turned it into a 3-week course, and now we're excited to say that we have 141 graduates out of our program, and since they've been home, only 2 have recidivated. It's awesome to be, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. It's awesome to be on this side of the table to talk about this kind of space. And now I give you guys the opportunity to be able to ask questions later. And feel free to connect with me before we leave. But I think it's important to have these conversations. While we all understand what a lot of these problems are, very seldom do we have the opportunity to really talk about what the possible solutions can be. I want to be a part of that solution, and I want to help open that up to you guys so that you can join me in that fight.
Thank you, Marcus. And Topeka.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Marcus, for making me smile. I was really heavy from the panel prior on Solitary, Dolores, that movie. Oh, my gosh. And thank you, ladies, for having me here. Yes, my bio continuously increases every month, but thanks be to God, because, you know, we pray for things and they come to pass. Yep. So when I was incarcerated, unlike Marcus, as an adult. So I was 35, and that came from just my life and really trying to figure out who I was in a space of around my people. You know, I say when I was raised in Manorville, New York, and my parents were franchise business owners, and we were the only black family in our neighborhood. And so I wanted to go to an HBCU so I could be around people that looked just like me. And I ended up going to Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland. And when I got there, as excited as I was, it was also an experience for me because I was criticized. I was told that I sounded like I was white, or, you know, I was pretty to be dark-skinned, or, you know, I wasn't like everyone else. And so I remember calling my mom and having these conversations with her and really trying to figure out, you know, like what was going on and why was this happening, because I knew I was black, but I didn't know there was a difference, right? And so I started veering off of campus and just hanging in the city of Baltimore, and I started to become exposed to things that I was never exposed to before, which led me to dating guys who were in the street and hustling, and then me thinking that I can do it myself. And so I got caught up in this cycle. And eventually that landed me to federal prison. And so I was charged with a conspiracy drug charge. And when I went into prison, I had an idea of thinking that people did drugs because they wanted to. I thought that, you know, I knew not to take the same drugs that I either sold or conspired to sell, but yet people did it because they knew what the consequences were, and they did it because they wanted to. And yet, I always talk about this one young woman who told me that she started taking heroin because her father was raping her and told her to take it and it would make the pain go away. And then as I started to go to NA meetings, because I really wanted to know what the impacts of drugs were on women in particular and families, I heard these testimonies over and over again, and spiritually was convicted and knew that what I had engaged in, outside of the fact of, you know, by design, that it was put into our community, specifically communities of color, to disrupt us and send us to prison, but also the fact that people did drugs a lot of times because they did not have access to mental health. They didn't even know that they may have been survivors or victims of some type of violence that was perpetuated against them. And so through my journey and meeting all these women, I also knew that because I had great support, and when I was just talking to Cheryl about, was that sometimes, you know, you have what's called even survivor's remorse, because through my plea, I only had 5 years, and there were women who were incarcerated for life with the same charges that I had. And so, you know, it was placed on me that I had to come home and I had to help women who were incarcerated and provide resources and access to opportunity to help them. And prior to me going to prison, I was also an entrepreneur. I was division chairperson for Amtrak On-Board Service Workers Union, so it was very easy for me to organize because that was the field that I had been in. And so I had met with Andrea James, who had founded the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls, and gave me the opportunity to travel all over the country when I was released in 2015 to meet women all over and really connect. And I found that it was the same issues that women were facing being released: housing, access to resources, employment, or even entrepreneurship opportunities. And so I decided to start the Ladies of Hope Ministries, with focus on giving women those resources through education, entrepreneurship, spiritual empowerment, and housing. And so all while still on federal supervision. And as I was doing the work, I started getting some pushback from probation and parole. And I was told by my probation officer that my movements was as if I was still selling drugs, that I was moving like I was a drug dealer, is what she said. And so she suspended my travel, and I hired an attorney, and I filed a motion. And I went to the judge. The judge would remove the travel ban. And they said, okay, well, you can travel 3 times a month, and then you have to go back to the probation officer and then to the judge. So that happened because I was traveling like every week, sometimes 3 times a week, and then the cycle would continue. I had to file these motions. The judge would let me travel. They said I couldn't get my passport. Judge said I could, and I was going back and forth, and I started documenting it and putting it on Facebook, and people were just reaching out, women and men from all over the country, and they were like, wait, I'm going through the same thing. I'm on parole for 20 years, and I've been home, and, they won't let me go. And I'm like, there's something that, I have to do about this. And I started a project through my Social Justice Fellowship called Probation and Parole Accountability, and that's to create a Know Your Rights guide for people on probation and parole, so that they don't have to continue to be harassed and surveilled by this arbitrary system that we all know is another system designed to incarcerate and keep people incarcerated. And so as I started Hope House, it was the same issues occurring, that because my federal supervision status, they wouldn't allow women who were on state parole to live in the house, because in New York State it's called Rule 7. Federally, it's a stipulation on conditions of release that people with convictions cannot fraternize, supervise, or be around each other, which is out of date and antiquated. And clearly, we see what's productive out of us being the best support for each other. And so the first year I was out, I filed an early termination of sentence, and they denied me without prejudice and told me that I wasn't doing anything extraordinary, and so and probation was not hindering me from doing the work. Yet I filed again in January of this year, and I wanted to share with you a part of the judge's opinion, which is exciting. And so it reads, the record reflects that Sam has shown exceptional reasons for early termination of supervised release. She has complied with all the conditions of her supervised release, although that is necessary, rather than a sufficient reason for early termination. There is no identifiable risk to either the public or any identified party. She has also shown extraordinary rehabilitation by working actively for the benefit of others who were previously imprisoned. She has received a Social Justice Fellowship and is actively involved in various efforts to help those who were formerly incarcerated. In particular, she has been responsible for establishing Hope House, a home for formerly incarcerated women. However, her laudable efforts have in fact been hampered by her supervised release, because she's restricted in her ability to associate with others who are still on supervised release. Her supervised release has also been cited as one reason why the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision will not grant Hope House permission to open and house parolees. Terminating Ms. Sam's supervised release will allow her to work more actively with those who are still on supervised release and fulfill her goal to opening Hope House to its first residents. Lastly, given that Sam has completed nearly half of her supervised release and has already completed a relatively substantial prison sentence, the continued period of supervised release is unnecessary for deterrence or to reflect the seriousness of the offense. Therefore, after careful review of the defendant's circumstances in light of the facts enumerated in 3553, the defendant's request for early termination of supervised release is granted. Thank you. Thank you. And that was just on February 12th, so we'll see what Doc says next week when I meet with the Secretary of State. if they give us another reason that women on state parole can't move in. But it was extremely important, and for me, this opinion can really help other people who are on federal supervision, and also help with us in the work that we're doing to try to remove the stipulation on all conditions of release that people with convictions cannot support one another. Because as I said, and as we see here, we are our best support. If it wasn't for formerly incarcerated women that I've met all over this country, I wouldn't even known about a Soros Justice Fellowship. If it wasn't about formerly incarcerated women like Susan Burton across this country, that I wouldn't know that it was possible for other formerly incarcerated women to be able to provide housing for other women to come home. You know, so I think that it's incredibly important in the work that we do, and especially we've talked at law schools all around the country to students, that when you're